We will call the meeting to order, and we will commence it by starting with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Liberty and justice for all.
And now the ethics awareness reminder. In accordance with State Government Ethics Act, it is the duty of every council of interest and the appearances of conflict. If any council member has any known conflict of interest or is aware of facts that might create the appearance of such conflict with respect to any matters coming before the council today, please identify the conflict or the facts that might create the appearance of a conflict to ensure that any inappropriate participation in that matter may be avoided. If at any time any new matter raises a conflict during the meeting, please be sure to identify it at that time. Okay, our last meeting took place on February 4th. You all have been sent the minutes and have the opportunity to review it. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Commissioner Causey, second by Treasurer Briner. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The minutes are adopted. Interest matters, Treasurer Briner.
Over to the short-term interest calculations on no page number of the materials that you have. You'll see that the general fund made $53.7 million in the month of February, and the highway trust fund just shy of $10 million. Interest rates are consistent month over month in January relative to December, or February relative to January. So I'll move on to.
Yes, please move on to the motions and bonds.
So I'd like to recognize Deputy Treasurer Tomasco to present the resolutions around the Build NC bonds first.
Thank you. Deputy Treasurer.
Good morning, Governor Stein and members of the council. The first resolution you have is a resolution authorizing the issuance of up to $300 million in Build NC bonds. These bonds will be used to finance regional and divisional transportation projects included in the state transportation improvement plan. They have a scheduled sale date of April 15th for these bonds, and they will have a 15-year maturity. All of the statutory requirements of the Department of State Treasurer, the Department of Transportation, and the Department of Administration have been met for you to provide your approval.
Thank you. Any questions, discussion? Yes, sir. Mr. Farley.
Thank you, Governor. I just wanted to confirm that these are bonds that were previously approved by a referendum of the voters. Is that right?
These are not general obligation bonds. No, they are limited obligation bonds.
Was there any approval by voters?
Non-unlimited obligation bonds. The Build NC bonds are authorized under the Build NC Bond Act of 2018.
Okay, thank you.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Second? Second. The Lieutenant Governor. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Garvey bonds.
The Garvey bonds, the second resolution is a resolution issuing, authorizing the issuance of up to $475 million in Garvey bonds. That includes both a $175 million component to refund outstanding 2015 Garvey bonds and the issuance of up to $300 million in new bonds. These bonds are scheduled to be sold on May 1st. Again, have a maturity of 15 years. And again, the statutory requirements of the Department of State Treasurer and the Department of Transportation have been met. I will note that under statute, the Local Government Commission also needs to authorize the sale of these bonds, and this matter is on the agenda on their for the April meeting.
Very good. Any questions or discussion? Yes, Secretary State Marshal.
One question and, well, two questions. In the refunding, what is the state savings?
The state savings is $22.7 million in interest. I'm sorry, I apologize, $8.3 million in interest savings.
And these are based upon federal funds. What are your bond counsel and other folks telling you with regard to the continued availability of federal funds out for the distance it would need to be required to satisfy this?
We have no information at this point that's going to be a disruption to funding. If the folks from DOT have any other information they'd like to share, I would defer to them.
Anyone from DOT here? Joey? Secretary Hopkins?
Happy to speak. I don't know that I have any other information. Mr. Governor, members of the council, good morning. I'm Joey Hopkins, Secretary of Transportation. So I think that's a great question, Secretary Marshall. And our worry from a federal standpoint this time is more from a discretionary side. We've been very successful in going after discretionary grants at DOT, and we've been able to pull in over $1.8 billion in grant money. That's in addition to our normal formula money as part of the bipartisan infrastructure law. Any of those grants, though, that we don't already have signed grant agreements in hand have been paused. And so I'm not sure if they're going to be restarted or not. This Garvey bond, though, is what we will repay with formula funds. And under the bipartisan infrastructure law, we get about $1.5 billion a year in federal transportation dollars to help mostly with our capital program. And so that's what will be used to pay back these Garvey bonds. And we've had no indication from USDOT or anybody in the federal government that those dollars will be cut moving forward.
Yes.
Governor, thank you. And Secretary Hopkins, first of all, I appreciate your reaching out to our office ahead of this. A couple of questions I had just for clarification, and we've discussed this matter. Your current cash on hand that's available for construction and your capacity annually to construct in North Carolina, and then the anticipated use of these particular dollars. Can you speak to those 3 points, please?
Yes, sir. And I didn't look at our cash balance this morning, but our trust fund balance is
About 746.
just under $750 million, and that's what we use for our capital program. And so these bonds will be used to fund capital projects. If you look in your package, there's 2 projects in eastern Wake County. They're part of the toll project that it will fund. And if for some reason that we weren't able to sell these bonds or this didn't pass, then we would have to defer other projects, because the way the bond system works for us is we put it on active projects. These aren't future projects. We put it on projects that's already under construction, and it frees up future dollars for us to bring other projects forward in the schedule to do that. And I'm sorry, I may have missed one of the questions.
Yeah, what the capacity is
Okay, yes, sir.
in terms of building, and what our annual capacity is in terms of actual, laying of concrete and asphalt
Yeah.
for roads.
So that's something that we've looked at really closely here recently because of the devastation in western North Carolina. I think y'all have heard our numbers out in the media. We estimated it could be as much as $5 billion to restore the public transportation infrastructure in western North Carolina. And so that worries us from one extent is how fast you can do that and what impact that has on your other programs. And so the number that we feel like we can do from a capacity level from the construction side is about $850 million a month. And so that would be very tough to sustain that over a long period of time, but that's an inflation adjusted number and the highest that we've met a few years ago, a couple of times. So that's probably our capacity.
Yes, sir. Commissioner Troxel.
Secretary, have the federal dollars begin to flow for the repair of the roads in western North Carolina? It looked like in the beginning there was not a lot of money that was flowing. Has that picked up the pace, and do you expect more?
So here's historical storms for us. Most of the time we get those federal dollars either near the end or after the storm's over. But the highest cost storm we've ever had to date is Florence. And it cost the Department of Transportation about $250 million. That's a big number, but it's a lot easier to float a $250 million figure than it is a $5 billion figure. Because of that, we've been very aggressive in going after those federal reimbursements already. And we've already got multi-millions of dollars from both FEMA and FHWA. The total amount is somewhere around $120 million that we've gotten back in hand already, but we've already spent over $450 million. We'll continue to be aggressive in going after that. We've also, the governor and I signed a letter a couple of weeks ago asking the federal government for full reimbursement of all costs to the Department of Transportation. That's been done before, multiple times across the country. The most recent one is the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Maryland. The federal government is fully funding that replacement from that disaster that happened there. I'm hopeful that we will see something like that here in North Carolina. We haven't heard a response back from that letter yet. I am going back to DC tomorrow to have conversations with some of our congressmen about that and see where we stand and what their thoughts are on that too.
Another thing that Secretary Hopkins and the department is doing is they're actually getting pre-reimbursed. When there's a more standardized project, they're getting the money for a bridge. If the average is 80 million, well, not that high, at 10 million, then they'll get the 10 million before they do the work, and then they'll true up on the end, either a little bit more or a little bit less. Just trying to keep the cash flow going so that we don't have to stop projects out west or stop projects the rest of the state.
And I do want to thank you and the Department of Transportation for the work you've done in Western North Carolina. Having been there multiple times and seeing what it looked like, it's been amazing that you've been able to do what you've been able to do.
Thank you, sir. We've had a lot of help from our partners. Other states have been helping with that, both Florida and Kentucky. Our contracting partners and consulting partners have been a big part of that too. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Governor.
Yes, Commissioner Farley.
Yeah, Mr. Secretary, first I want to say thank you to you and your staff. You came over on Friday afternoon to talk Garvey bonds, which probably not most people's preferred topic for 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon before the start of a weekend. But I'm grateful that you made yourself and your staff available, and thank you to the governor for making them available. We had a very good conversation. Let me say, first of all, I'm not the kind of person who likes debt. I pay off my credit card bill every month. So it took a while for me to get comfortable with the concept of these Garvey bonds. But we did have a very good conversation. I would like, if you don't mind, just for the benefit of the public and maybe the media that's here, to explain just generally what a Garvey bond is, because I do think hopefully we've got some folks watching online, and I think they might. That's an acronym, first of all, right? So would you just mind explaining in general what they are?
Yes, so I may have to defer to our financial staff that's in the back of the room, but it is an acronym. It's Grant Anticipated Revenue Vehicle.
Okay.
And that's what it stands for. And basically what we're doing is we're advancing federal dollars, bringing those dollars forward, paying that back over that 15-year period. And that frees up additional federal obligation that we can do projects earlier than what we would normally do if we did it as we had the cash in hand.
And so it's not a general obligation bond, right?
No, sir.
So not backed by the full faith and credit of the state of North Carolina.
It's backed by the federal government, not by the state.
So specific revenue stream, not just the taxing power of North Carolina.
Yes, sir.
So, and I had asked some of these questions to your staff, and I'm happy to have them answer if you'd prefer.
Well, I'm just making sure I'm not missing
Okay.
anything.
Um,
I'm an engineer, not a business person.
So the main concern I had when this bond was presented to us was what happens if the federal government doesn't come through with the revenue that is supposed to back these bonds? And so the main question I had, what happens if the federal government money doesn't come through as a practical matter?
And that's probably a question for somebody else rather than me. Mark, do you mind? This is Mark Newsom, our CFO.
Mark, good to see you again, and I appreciate you indulging me on this, but I think it's important for the citizens to understand. Go ahead.
Sure. No, happy to. First off, that's never happened in the past. So the Garvey bonds, the program has been longstanding with the federal government. Actually, it's not a federal program. It is a state debt instrument, but that instrument is backed by that specific revenue stream of the federal formula dollars. Were there to be some problem with that revenue stream, the rest of the state's funds would not necessarily be at risk there. It would just be tied to that particular revenue stream. And in all honesty, it would probably end up in the courts relatively quickly. We do hold the proceeds from that bond, and the earnings from those bond sales are held, they're considered restricted cash for the department and for the state, and they're held by a trustee. And so if there were a situation where a default occurred, the money that was being held by the trustee would certainly be returned to the bondholders, but I think we would see that tied up in court.
So the bonds are issued, the money comes to the state, it's put in a trust fund, and then if there's a default by the federal government, the bondholders' rights are in the money that's in the trust fund,
Exactly.
not a recourse against the state of North Carolina.
Exactly. That is, and after our conversations on Friday, we refreshed ourselves on all the former agreements just to confirm, but it really is, it's not happened before, and bond defaults with governments are very unusual. Probably the highest profile one in recent years have been with Puerto Rico.
And when you say it hasn't happened before, you don't just mean North Carolina garbage, you mean nationwide
No,
garbage,
yeah,
right?
nationwide, that formula revenue that the secretary referred to is considered a fairly secure, extremely secure source of revenue.
So in my research about these, couple of things that stood out to me is, we made a secondary pledge, of our own credit, I guess, as the state of North Carolina as part of these bonds? A secondary pledge of our own
Sure.
resources.
I'm glancing over at our controller who has a little more detail on that. I'm not aware of a secondary pledge that we've ever made there. Is that?
Correct.
Yeah.
We don't have a secondary.
We don't have a secondary.
And they're not backstopped.
Oh, so you were asking if we
Yeah,
do
if
or
we
not?
do.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, we
Excuse
do.
me. I thought you said you discovered that we had.
No.
Okay.
That's one of the issues.
Oh,
that,
no,
I
not at
wanna
all.
be sure.
The general obligation power of the state is not.
And they're not
considered
insured.
here.
And they're not insured either.
Separately insured, no.
Okay. Do you know offhand what the rating of the bonds is right now?
Right now, the state treasurer's financial consultants have given us an approximately all-in of about 3.5%.
And how about by the rating agencies? What do you know?
It's, Shivani, that's AA. Can you,
It is A+ by S&P, AA by Moody's, which is an up from 2, and AA by.
So maybe if you don't mind, explain what that says about how the market sees the risk of these bonds.
well, that's what, your earlier question, or I think there was an earlier question about the risk associated with these bonds. We tend to look to the market, at least as one indicator there of the risk. And I'd say the first indicator from my perspective is the actual rate we're estimating to receive. While that 3.5 is relatively, is a little higher than it's been in recent years, historically, that's an excellent rate, and we feel pretty good about it. If you look at some other indicators, 10-year Treasury yields are actually, went up a bit at the end of last year. Those are coming back down, which is a relatively good sign as well. And then as Shivani Johnny, our Director of Finance, just mentioned, Moody's actually increased the rate on the Garveys recently. So from a market standpoint, we see a lot of positive indicators on this particular issuance.
Thank you. I mean, those are the things that made me comfortable supporting this. It's not backed by the full faith and credit of the state. Bondholders' recourses against the revenue that's generated, that's held in the trust fund, and the market seems to think that these are reasonable credit risks. So,
Thank you, Commissioner. Yes,
Thank you. And I do appreciate this. I got the same sort of debrief. And so like Commissioner Farley, I've become comfortable. I'd like to hear from the treasurer though, with respect to his perspective on the markets, the rate, and the holding of those funds prior to the distribution for road building.
Sure.
Treasurer, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Auditor. I think two comments I'd make. First, if you look at the different presentations that are being made this morning with respect to the Build NC bonds and the Garvey bonds, to your exact question about the market's perception of the risk here, the Garveys trade 0.1% higher in terms of yield. So that's the market telling you they think they are ever so slightly riskier than the limited obligation bonds that we're issuing under Build NC as a first principles matter. In terms of the other pieces of this, there is a reasonably large escrow of proceeds. In addition to the trust, we hold back 10%, I believe it is, in an escrow for debt service to further ensure that these bonds are not risky. So from my perspective, there's no interest cost to issuing long duration bonds right now in the market. You have a rare condition in the shape of the yield curve where we issue long-term bonds. We put that money in essentially a checking account that makes interest, and those rates are the same. That is not a normal condition, but that is where we find ourselves today. And so from the perspective of what's the cost of issuing debt that you may not need at the exact moment you're issuing it, the answer is zero right now, which makes me comfortable with issuing these probably a little bit in advance of when we actually need them. The only other point I'd raise is when asked about cash on hand, you referenced the Highway Trust Fund, $750 million in the trust fund. There's also $2 billion in the Highway Fund, as I recall. And most of the COVID expenses Helene-related expenses that we're going to incur are going to come out of the Highway Fund. Is that correct as well?
That's correct.
So those are the comments I'd make in addition to what's already been said.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Mr. Treasurer, and I have a lot of confidence in your ability in that office, and that got me to a better understanding of what we're doing. So I do like the refinance of the May 2015 bonds that save 8.3 million. I think that's certainly.
Great. This was a very helpful discussion all. Thank you. Any motions?
Move approval.
Troxler and Causey, move and second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Fire insurance matters. Commissioner Causey.
Thank you, Governor. On
Well, can I just say something?
What?
I'm glad you're making this report for us today. It's good to have you here.
Thank you for your phone call, too.
You're welcome.
On page 11, the state property fire insurance fund balance at the end of January is $85.1 million. And on the back, on page 12, we just have one claim that needs to be paid, and that was at UNC Chapel Hill, a wind loss for $43,000. So I move we pay that item.
Second?
Second.
By the Commissioner of Labor. All in favor? All opposed? The fire matters is approved. We will now have Board of Transportation Right-of-Way matters. Charles Grady.
Morning, Governor, members of Council of State. There's 5 items for your consideration today. All items have been reviewed by the Chief Engineer and approved by the Secretary and the Board of Transportation by resolution, and I'll be happy to take any questions you have.
Any questions, Mr. Grady? Yes.
I want to thank you. There was some slight clarification in the language presented to the council from the last. I want to thank you for
Yes,
that.
sir.
I think that's
Absolutely.
very helpful.
Good.
So I appreciate that.
Thank you, Auditor.
Move approval.
Thank you, Secretary Marshall. Move approval. Second.
Second.
Senator Bullock. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Sir.
State property matters, Tim Walton.
Morning, Governor, members of the council. I need to make one change in your, or we had left the number out on page 21. Acquisition by easement. In the comments on line 3, you'll see it begins with the Nature Preserves Act in parens. It's part 42, not 2. Part 42 of Article 2 of Chapter 143. Just want to make that clarification.
I was confused by that.
I'm sure you would. But with that, we have 17 items for your consideration this morning.
Great. Any questions for Mr. Walton? Motion?
So
Moved by the Commissioner of Agriculture and second by the Commissioner of Insurance. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Thank you.
Motion carries. We will do our roundtable now and start with our Secretary of State, Elaine Marshall.
Good morning. Good morning, Governor and everyone else. We can see spring is coming upon us outside, thankfully. Blossoms are coming out. This is the time of year when I use the winter metaphor, though, that at the Secretary of State's office in springtime, we see a little snowball at the top of the hill, and it gets larger and larger and larger as it comes down toward tax day, April 15th. So we kind of get smothered by that. But it's a time when companies have to pay their annual, or file their annual renewal with the Secretary of State's office and pay the accompanying fee. This helps us to keep our database current. People make buy, sell, lend, borrow, investment decisions over data about businesses in our database. And it's very important that it be kept up to date. And by the annual reporting, that's how we keep that. Now, we have a brand new website, as I announced, same address, sosnc.gov. It's much easier for folks to file online, and we strongly, strongly encourage that because that takes a load off of a lot of our staff. Now, everybody worries about meeting deadlines. This is the time of year when people get preyed upon with misleading mailings. Mailings for things you don't need, or mailings for things that we provide at no cost or very minimal cost that they're charging you an exorbitant price for. They're hoping that you don't read the fine print down at the bottom that says, this is not authorized by the state of North Carolina, this is not required, what have you. We face this problem around Christmas time towards the end of the year and then on into tax time. You as Attorney General, Cooper as Attorney General, we haven't had the experience with Attorney General Jackson, but we've gone to court on some of these to enjoin them, been successful on all of those. But they continue to refine their craft to make it seem more like an official state announcement. And they barely qualify by that teeny tiny mice print down at the bottom. So we want everybody to that gets these to inspect it, evaluate it very carefully to make sure that they are not being sucked into paying for something they don't need, or something that won't be good after 6 months because certain certifications are not, and that it could be obtained for free. The website is very, very easy to use. Sometimes something that we charge $5 for, they're charging $100 for. It's just ridiculous. And a lot of things are free, as I said. So again, go to sosnc.gov. There's a section there on misleading mailings. And that will be a measure of self-protection for businesses out there, not to get sucked into the scammers that are trying to take their money.
Thank you, Secretary Marshall. Commissioner Troxler.
Governor, we've been very, very busy. We are still working with the legislature on a package for agriculture as far as losses from not only Helene, but statewide weather conditions. We've got about $5 billion in uninsured losses in agriculture from this past year that we need to help our folks get through. So we'll continue to do that. We have worked outbreaks of high path avian influenza, and I quite frequently abbreviate that to high path AI. We were the first AIs. But it does get confusing, Ben, and maybe artificial intelligence will help us with avian influenza, but it's quite serious. When you see egg prices like they are now, we did have the largest egg facility in the state down with high path avian influenza, which does have a national implication on egg prices. So we've got to work our way through that. And the soup of the day now is wildfires. We've got quite a number of wildfires across the state, literally from the mountains to the coast. And it comes at a time that the North Carolina Forest Service has 100 open positions in firefighting. It's quite difficult, especially in the mountains when it takes a lot of hand labor to control these fires. And we partner with our local volunteer fire departments, and unfortunately, most of them are way understaffed now. And there are two reasons that we have all these positions open in the firefighting service. It's salary is the number one reason, but also we're not raising as many young folks that have an interest in the outdoors and firefighting. And quite frankly, volunteer fire departments have always been the catalyst for young people to decide to go into firefighting either through the Forest Service or municipal, or, so we don't have the base to draw from that we did, and the salaries are low. But we're in a dangerous situation. The fire in Polk County is one that, of course, Helene went through, and we have a tremendous load of fuel on the ground. And where we used to use logging roads and private roads to be able to get to fires, many of them are damaged or closed. So it takes extra time and extra personnel. And on top of that, we've got two 24-year-old wore-out helicopters and a lot of worn-out bulldozers. So we've got to make a concerted effort to rebuild the North Carolina Forest Service to the capacity that we need. when you see these fires in Los Angeles, and you see the devastation that can happen, it's not California that ranks #1 in the interface of wildfires and people and buildings. It is North Carolina. So not only do we have that to worry about and the large fuel load that we have on the ground, but if we continue with these dry conditions, further into the spring with wind, we can get in serious problems. And I still have horrors of what happened in 2016 in the mountains, and even worse, what happened to Gatlinburg, Tennessee during that same period of time. So it is a serious situation that we have got to address as a state and do it right now. So other than that, everything's good. But I do have one complaint about these bond issues. I looked at the different projects that we have. There is no project to make 20 lanes each way, Interstate 40, with a dedicated lane to Brown Summit. So I'm complaining about that.
Secretary Hopkins, you hear that? Okay, good. Treasurer Briner.
We'll issue the next bonds for that. Thank you, everybody. First, I'd like to recognize Deputy Treasurer Tomasco and Interim Director of State Debt, Carolyn Hayden, for all their work on the bond issues. Thank you for that, and thank you to DOT for all your diligence in getting those over the finish line. I want to talk about accountability this morning. Obviously, DC is very focused on government efficiency, but at the Department of State Treasurer, we're very focused on that as well. One of my first initiatives in starting this job was to request all of my underlying divisions to report to me what their 1 or 2 key accountability metrics are. We now have those published on the front page of our webpage. I'd encourage everyone here to consider doing the same so that we can help the citizens navigate to what it is important that we do and put that up front so that they can understand exactly what it is we're doing. I want to update you on the Helene cash flow loans. I mentioned last month that we would get money out by the end of February. We did succeed in doing that. We built that program from the ground up in about 7 weeks. We worked very collaboratively with the cities and the counties out west to help effectuate that. More money is going out this week. Buncombe County, which is getting the largest loan, should vote today, I believe, to accept that loan. We do need a vote to accept interest-free loans, believe it or not. And so they will do that today, and we'll get that money out to them ASAP. We're obviously happy to help with Helene relief in any way that the legislature and the governor see fit. And so we're happy to have fulfilled this piece of our responsibilities. In less or more sobering news, the state health plan. We have a board meeting this Friday. We would love anyone and everyone to participate in that board meeting. As has been well advertised, we have a real financial challenge on our hands in the state health plan. There's a $500 million hole for 2026, more than double that for the following year. This is not a let's hope we can fix it in a couple of years problem. This is a we need to fix it today kind of problem. And we do not have necessarily all the answers. So we invite everybody here to participate in us helping to solve that problem. One of the pieces of the solution to that problem is likely a premium increase. As you'll have seen, North Carolina ranks #1 in highest healthcare premiums in the country. That is not a title we aspire to, but it's a title we have. We are likely to increase employee premiums in the state health plan from $25 a month or $300 a year to something like $550 a year. The average company in this state charges almost $1,700 a year. So while premiums are likely to go up and they will be marginally less affordable, I must emphasize this is still a great benefit for our state employees. We are going from 1/6 of the cost of the average company to maybe 1/4. It is not to trivialize that increase, but it's to tell you that we still think this is a great benefit to our state employees. So I would encourage everyone to attend the board meeting or send someone on Friday afternoon. We have a lot of important work ahead of us, and we welcome any input because we do not have a monopoly on all the good ideas. I want to talk briefly about pensions as well. We are in full force on a proposal to reform the way that we govern pensions in the state. We have a $16 billion deficit in our state pension plan, which can be fixed through better investment management. We do that with a sole fiduciary model, meaning that I have, within statutory limitations, the ability to make investments as I see fit. I do not think that is the best in class model. 47 other states agree with that statement. And so we want to go down the road of taking some of the power away from the state treasurer, impaneling a board of experts to make better investments for our state employees, to make better outcomes for our investments and for the finances of this state. You'll hear a lot more about that in the coming weeks and months. Finally, I just want to end on talking about these meetings. I think these meetings are incredibly important for our citizens and the taxpayers that fund everything that we do. We all sit here on equal footing, managing our departments as we see fit. But as I said, I welcome all of your input in what we have to do with the Department of State Treasurer. We need your help, your solutions, and your thoughts as we confront some serious financial challenges for the state. With that, I'll end there and say God bless our great state.
Thank you, Treasurer. Superintendent Green.
Good morning, Council of State, Governor. I'll just state a couple of things. First of all, the State Board of Education and I actually agreed on a joint set of legislative priorities for the first time in a number of years. We have shared those with the General Assembly and look forward to the conversations that we're having with them. And then second, something that I referenced last time that I'll lift back up. We are still in line for us having a strategic plan be put in place in the June timeframe, and we're in the midst of our listening and learning efforts right now. We're going to be touring the state starting March the 17th with what's called Mo Wants to Know. And so would encourage constituents, community members to get out, share what they want for our public education system going forward.
Excellent. Thank you. Commissioner Causey.
Thank you, Governor. Governor, I'd like to take a moment of personal privilege to introduce one of our newest employees at the Department of Insurance, Corey Mercer. Stand up, Corey. Corey is a retired fire chief from the city of Rocky Mount. He has over 3 decades of service to the fire service, and he also served a stint as fire chief in Elizabeth City, North Carolina. Corey's a United States Army veteran, served during Desert Storm, and I had the privilege of working with him as insurance commissioner and state fire marshal. Corey, when he was chief, in his own record, that he had one of the most diverse recruiting programs in the country. He was very successful in recruiting and retention of a diverse firefighter workforce. And during his tenure, the fire department in Rocky Mount achieved something that very few fire departments achieved. He achieved a Class 1 rating. And in the past, Class 1's been the big cities, Greensboro, Raleigh, Charlotte, but he presided over Rocky Mount going to a Class 1. And I also had the privilege during his tenure of the 125th anniversary of the Rocky Mount Fire Department. But it was my honor to go to Rocky Mount to the city council meeting and present the mayor and city council and Chief Mercer with that Class 1 rating. So he's one of about 35 fire departments in the whole state that had achieved that rating. And Corey is our chief of fire and risk reduction, and he has covered for me this year when I couldn't get out there, making Ward's presentation to fire departments, and he's our liaison with FEMA, and he's all out helping our victims of Hurricane Helene up in the mountains. So we just welcome Corey. Thank you, Corey.
Great. Good to have you, Corey. Attorney General Jackson.
Thank you, Governor and Secretary Marshall. I hear you loud and clear with respect to those scam mailers. I know that you know that as soon as you get wind of those, we are ready to work with your office to keep people safe from those attempted scams. Major announcement from our office recently was an investigation into PowerSchool. Any of you who have school-aged children may be familiar with this software. There was a data breach that affected almost 4 million North Carolinians, roughly 60 million people nationwide. A lot of students, obviously, but also a lot of teachers exposing their personal data. In North Carolina, we have laws about not just breaches and hacking, but steps that organizations have to take to safeguard your data. So the nature of the investigation is to determine whether PowerSchool did what they needed to do before the breach to safeguard your data. We'll keep you posted on the outcome. We, along with the governor's office, the Department of Commerce, the town of Canton, and Haywood County, reached a settlement recently with Pactiv Evergreen, which owned the former paper mill in Canton, where they employed 800 workers. Pactiv is going to pay millions of dollars in financial restitution. The settlement also provides millions in additional value to Canton and Haywood County because Pactiv also withdrew all legal challenges related to property tax payments and won't bill Canton for wastewater treatment services. The origin of this was that Pactiv broke its promise to the state and to the people of Canton, and this settlement holds it accountable for violating that agreement. Organized retail crime, something that hurts businesses, causes stores to shut their doors, puts employees and customers in danger, and pushes costs up for everyone. We joined a bipartisan coalition of 38 attorneys general to urge Congress to help stop organized retail crime by passing the Combating Organized Retail Crime Act of 2023. The general essence of this would increase federal penalties for supply chain thefts and help states and the federal government work together to help fight organized retail crime. All for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Attorney General. Commissioner Farley.
Thank you, Governor. Commissioner Causey, it's good to see you, and I'm glad to see that you're doing well. So glad for us to be at another meeting together. And that is also thanks to the governor. At our last meeting, Governor, we talked about returning to 12 meetings a year. You heard those concerns, and we are back to 12 meetings a year. And I want to say thank you for hearing those concerns and bringing us back to 12 meetings. So thank you, Governor.
Thank you.
We have a lot going on at the Department of Labor, but the most impactful thing for me as commissioner this month was to take a trip out to Western North Carolina. We went to Spruce Pine to sort of check on recovery efforts. I brought my senior staff with me, and I told the folks there that I met with, mostly small business owners, that I would report back to you what they shared with me. Now, our department, there are a lot of people working on Helene recovery, which is fantastic. I see the role of the Department of Labor and Helene recovery is specifically focusing on our workers and our small businesses. And when we were there in Spruce Pine, we had the chance to visit Lower Street, which formerly was very beautiful and can still be very beautiful and bustling. It is not that way today. There has been a lot of progress in Spruce Pine on Lower Street in clearing debris. The businesses that were destroyed have been cleared out, but not yet rebuilt. And one thing that the business leaders told me when I was there that I wanted to convey here today, they said for them every day is Groundhog Day. And those are their words, not mine. They feel like nothing changes and nothing really moves forward. And I told them I would convey that in particular. One business owner expressed something to me that really got my attention, and I think ought to be a concern for all of us, is that if they don't get their small businesses reopened soon, it is going to have a terrible cascading effect on the small towns of Western North Carolina. If the businesses don't get open, the workforce that formerly staffed those businesses is going to move away in search of work elsewhere. Workers are also customers, so the customers are going to be gone. The tax base is going to be permanently eroded, and these towns are going to be hollowed out. They will not be able to recover. And so getting the small businesses back up and running and making sure workers are able to get back to work and earning a living is key to recovery in Western North Carolina. And unfortunately, we've seen this exact thing play out before with other small towns that are hit by storms. I was looking into this a little bit, in Fairbluff, in Columbus County, the population of Fairbluff is now half of what it was before it was devastated by Matthew and Florence. And we don't want to see that happen again in Western North Carolina. And the key, though, is to get small businesses reopened, people going back to work, customers and people living in those towns, and keeping the tax base. Because once you get that snowball moving, I think it's very hard to recover. Now, I asked the folks out there, what is the greatest challenge for you to get your businesses reopened? And that is physically rebuilding them. I mean, the businesses are there, but they are entirely gutted and hollowed out. And the day we were there, there was no work going on them, not on a single one of the 7 or 8 that I saw on Lower Street. And they said the greatest challenge for them is bureaucracy and red tape. We spent an hour talking about that in Spruce Pine. There are permits and inspections and environmental assessments, and it just goes on and on and on. And so what I came away from that with is that money is crucial. Obviously, we have to get funding out there, but money alone is not what's going to help these towns rebuild. There has to be some regulatory reform that speeds up the rebuilding process so that people can put back what was there just as quickly as possible. They can get their lives back together. They can get their businesses open, and people can go back to work and go back to earning a living. And so that's what we'll be focusing on at the Department of Labor, is making sure the workers have jobs to go back to and advocating for some regulatory reform so that businesses can get back on their feet. So thank you, Governor.
Thanks, Commissioner.
Governor, could I comment on that? My son was the Methodist minister in Spruce Pine for 6 years, and so we know a lot of people up there. And I've been there over and over again, and we've got a lot of volunteers going into that area. But one thing that is really slowing things down is we got a lot of faith-based organizations going in to help up there, primarily Samaritan's Purse and Baptist on Mission. And the counties don't have enough inspectors to be able to inspect the building that's going on. So they go up to work and they're set up, and then they sit and they wait and they wait and they wait on inspectors. And I don't know if there's anything the state can do to help remedy that situation, but that goes on every day, and it is slowing recovery tremendously.
Good to hear. Yeah, there's a terrible situation for the local governments because at the same time, their expenses have skyrocketed and having to deal with the cleanup and the restoration of infrastructure, getting water and sewer back up. Their revenues are going down because the sales tax is down, property values are depressed. So they're hit with a double whammy, and we need to help the local governments to facilitate the revitalization of local business. Auditor Bullitt. I'm sorry. Yes.
On that topic, the recent grant that has, I'm not sure what, Duke Foundation going through Dogwood, we pushed out to our emails of the businesses in the 25 select counties. And on Friday afternoon of last week or the week before, within 1 hour, over 1,000 of them were opened up, and a high number have clicked through onto the application, and it continues to rise and rise as we've pushed the information out there about how to do it, where to go, and but we don't have the emails of all the businesses. They're not required to tell the state. And unfortunately, sometimes people put in an email that they really don't intend to use when they if they want to voluntarily do it, and we get bounce backs. But we're pushing the information out there as hard as we know how.
Thank you. Auditor Bullitt.
Thank you, Governor. So since our last meeting, obviously the auditor's office has been busy. We're continuing, and as I told the joint Gen Gov committee in the legislature a week ago, I've begun with an audit of the auditor. And so we will be releasing to the public a financial audit of our office, as well as a performance audit over the next 90 days of the auditor's office. Really feel like that's important as we go into agencies and other institutions and organizations across the state performing audits. We want to be transparent of our own office and what we're trying to do. Had a fantastic, I believe, entrance conference with the Division of Motor Vehicles a couple of Fridays ago. That audit is officially underway. And as I have told legislative leaders and people who have asked, we're dividing the Division of Motor Vehicles audit into multiple parts where we will drill down on specific parts of that particular agency to ultimately complete a full floor-to-ceiling audit. And we're hoping that that helps your next commissioner with respect to some data points and some action items and some common sense recommendations on how to improve that agency. That ultimately is our goal, to have impactful audits that have real meaning, and we feel like that this will help to set the standard of our office moving forward of how we can do that. We've also uploaded the initial version of our Helene funding dashboard. That is a change in the role and the sort of the function of the state auditor's office, where we intend to work not just as auditor and accountability, but as a true watchdog of taxpayer funds. We rolled that out, and it's beginning to be more and more furnished with data. Our ultimate goal is to have at least weekly data updates for members of this council, as well as the general public, to know exactly how funds are being spent, both from the federal level and the state level, in terms of Helene recovery. That in and of itself can work as a model for future big projects and future disaster relief efforts. Want to thank the treasurer. Treasurer and I have worked really hard over the last several weeks on some local government issues, and our cooperation there, I think, will bear fruit with respect to helping local municipalities with financial matters, keeping them straight and viable as local communities. Just wanted to mention that, and say that we're looking forward to an additional productive month coming ahead. Moving forward, I'm at work every day, working hard on behalf of the taxpayer.
Thank you, Auditor. Lieutenant Governor Hunt.
Thank you, Governor. It's great to be with all of you here today. We're continuing to get things going in the Lieutenant Governor's office, which means getting out on the road and talking to more people about how state government can help them. Since we were last around this table, I released my Future Ready North Carolina policy agenda, which outlines several main priorities for my office. As I shared with all of you before, securing a bright future for North Carolina means making sure our workers are able and trained for the jobs of today and tomorrow. I'll be tackling the childcare crisis as well to make sure folks are able to go to work. That includes making childcare affordable by renewing and expanding the North Carolina Tri-Share program and increasing the number of childcare training centers at community colleges. When it comes to making sure our people are trained, we have to invest in our community colleges through the Propel North Carolina program and provide meaningful support for career and technical education courses. Just last week, I launched my Future Ready Community College tour at Brunswick Community College, where we saw a training simulation lab for nurses, and I saw some things I've never seen before. I encourage everyone to go down there. It's unbelievable. We also saw machine technology and welding programs, which are very impressive. So I will continue to do that. I'm going to be going to every single community college in the next few years, and I'm very, very excited about what I'm going to see there. It's an honor to sit at this table with you all, and I'm grateful for the participation and the trust of the people of North Carolina. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Yeah, every time I go to a community college, I come back just jazzed. It's so exciting. Like the Secretary of State, we have a new website, and I want to thank Auditor Bullitt. He and his team have been great to work with on the Hurricane Helene, getting the data. We similarly are putting up a dashboard that's launching today, and it's wncrecovery.nc.gov, wncrecovery.nc.gov. And it's going to have a lot of information about what work has been done, and the flip side of every data point of what work has been done is the work that has not been done. And there is incredible work. DOT, Joey's team, 84% of impacted roads are fully reopened. That's 1,300 roads have been reopened since the beginning of the storm. That means 16% of the roads haven't been reopened. And I tell you, if they haven't been reopened yet, it's because the damage is massive. So it's the hardest, most expensive jobs left to be done. Temporary housing programs are serving today 5,720 households, meaning that they have safe, warm shelters. But those are folks whose houses are not permanently restored yet. That work is yet to be done. 4,750,000 cubic yards of debris has been removed. The estimates are that that is just a small fraction of the amount of debris that still needs to be taken up, potentially just a third of all the debris. I want to thank again DOT. On I-40, reopened to two-way traffic on March 1st. They worked so hard. In the course of doing the work, they had more of the roads fall into the river a couple months ago, but they persisted. That's an incredible victory, but that's 2 lanes and a 4-lane highway, and it's 40 miles an hour, not 65. So much more work to be done at I-40 alone. The Secretary of State referenced the Western North Carolina Small Business Initiative. That is a partnership of Dogwood Health Trust, the Duke Endowment, and the state of North Carolina, $35 million. Already, 989 loans have been issued. 600 more grants are going out this weekend. The demand for this product has been overwhelming. And I appreciated the points, Commissioner Farley, and we'll go back and look and see if there anything that the state is doing to slow down the revitalization of these small businesses. But there is no question that cash is one of those issues, that if we don't help these businesses get through these tough times to the summer when tourists start to come back, they may not be there. About half of businesses in disaster zones never come back. And if that happens, it means employees aren't earning income, meaning that they can't pay rent, and then the town slowly erodes. And we cannot have that happen across Western North Carolina. Half of all state parks and cultural sites have fully reopened in Western North Carolina, an incredible accomplishment, but that means that half have not. The state has made a request to our federal delegation of $19 billion, and we have a request at the General Assembly of $1 billion. The House moved its bill, and last night the Senate introduced its bill. All of it is a good start. They'll work out in conference what makes the most sense. But the underlying message I want to leave the people is we are making progress, but it is just a start. This work is long-term, and it's going to be hard, and we all have to be there together. And the administration intends to work with all of you in your respective departments, to work with the legislature, to work with these remarkable nonprofits, Baptist Home on Mission, Samaritan's Purse, Habitat for Humanity. They're doing incredible work. It's going to take all of us, and we are committed to doing it till the end. And thank you. We're now adjourned. Is there a motion for adjourn? Attorney General, he was quick on that one. Commissioner Causey seconds. Thank you.